guys, welcome back to Strong Successful Male. So for today, I'm going to be covering a Q&A to the video series I covered a few days ago, which was titled, After Years of Disrespect, Good Father Dumps Wife and Disinherits Daughter, Now Plans the Ultimate Payback. And guys, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, because if you're watching this and you obviously watched all three parts, you're familiar with it. It was only a couple days ago, or maybe you guys saw it just this morning, who knows. But our guy here obviously watched all three videos, which told nearly an hour and a half of video time. And obviously he enjoyed the fact that you guys watched it, commented, and all that. And so he's going to give a lot of answers to a lot of questions, common questions you guys had in the comment sections, things that I had, because I really enjoyed the story. It was one of the better long stories I've covered in a long time, and I know a lot of you guys enjoyed it. And so I was eager to hear what he has to say about various things. So he's going to go into it, and as you can see by the length of this video, it's quite a lot. So you'll get your money's worth. So grab your beer, your popcorn, whatever you like to snack on, and you'll enjoy this one. So he continues on. He says, Dear SSM, I'd like to respond to a couple of things you had questions and opinions on for clarification or things I feel like you're a little bit off on. Most what you had to say was spot on, though. I'll address a few of the comments I've seen so far. I don't want to directly respond in the comment section because my screen name is my full name, and I don't want to be doxxed or have it forwarded to my ex or my daughter yet. Yeah, you might want to change your username on YouTube at this point, man. I know that's probably not what you want to do, but it's probably not a bad idea. He says, number one, the kids were adopted from Russia, and there were a lot of good reasons for not adopting domestically. Okay, a lot of you guys thought it was Russia in the comment section. I was thinking that was maybe the second option. I was still thinking China for different reasons, things I've heard, but Russia makes a lot of sense. The reason we did not adopt domestically, first and foremost, and the only reason that mattered at the time to us, is that in the United States, a birth mother who changes her mind sometimes years later can demand the child back. And because of our effed up social welfare system, the child is automatically taken away from the adoptive parents. Then those adoptive parents are stuck with the responsibility to pay for a fortune in legal fees and court fees to get them back, if and only if you win. F that. Yeah, man, I get it. It's ridiculous here. So many kids, good little kids or babies, could be adopted, and the state has to screw the whole thing up. I knew a couple back in Massachusetts. They ended up adopting in the United States, and all the BS they went through. And I'm not just talking about a screening process, because of course you have a screening process to make sure the parents aren't wackos or whatever. We're going to sell the kids. But just the crap like having to send pictures to the birth mothers, to the birth mother, and visitations, and all that crap is ridiculous. So you can see why people adopt overseas, to avoid all that crap. He says, so if some crackhead cleans herself up for a couple weeks and she gets the kid back that she gave up, then who we bonded with, been raising and paying for, hell no. It's about as sensible as being a very rich man and getting married in California without a prenup. Someone may be willing to take on that risk, but it's just not for me. Stories like this made the news quite often and at that time, and the thought of that happening would be like a real-life horror show. Yeah, think about it. You adopt a kid, you develop a bond, and a few years later, you may lose them. No way. But that's the absolute stupidity of the whole system. Throughout the video, you mentioned that I didn't check the ex or the kids or enforce rules with consequences. While I didn't mention it, I assure you that was not the case. The story was long, and I did leave a lot out for brevity's sake. We had arguments galore that involved raising voices almost daily. There were consequences for the kids that did include what you had suggested, like taking away the phone, grounding, and at one point my son, a detailed written plan on how he was going to lose sports privileges if he failed another test or didn't turn in another homework assignment. I threatened and was close to removing doors from bedrooms. Car use was taken away. I turned off the hot water while they were in the shower on more than one occasion. Damn, man, turn off the hot water, they're in the shower. Now, some people might label that as abusive, but I think it's funny. So, okay, you did try to lay down the law and enforce things, but you weren't a united front with your wife, so it just didn't work. That was the problem. I don't know if my son was that dense or he was just playing stupid, but I heard he was bitching to his friends that he got his phone taken away again, and his friends were razzing him about being dumb and doing the same thing over and over. Everybody knew but him. Right, you keep doing the same thing, and there's going to be punishments. Duh, learn from it. Here's how the typical disciplinary interaction went on with my son, and mind you, he's the better of the two kids now. He would say, why are you, insert the punishment, me? And I'd say to him, because I told you to do whatever and you didn't, and now there are consequences. Him, but my friends make fun of me and it's inconvenient. This next part I will go into say nearly verbatim, no less than 1,000 times, no exaggeration. I would say to him, well, until you learn from this, stop doing what you aren't supposed to do. The consequences will continue to be more severe. He says, learn? I don't even know what that means. Dude, really? I say to him, well, when a child touches a stove and burns his hand, they learn. They learn that touching a stove causes pain, and they stop doing that. The smart child only touches the stove one time. The less intelligent one may have to touch 2 or 3 times to confirm that touching the stove is what causes the pain. Then there's you. You keep touching the stove and complaining about getting burned as if you should be able to touch it and not experience any pain at all. I assure you, you will never touch the stove and not get burned. You need to decide if you're going to keep touching the stove or learn that there's pain involved and stop doing it. And according to him, he would have a blank stare with his mouth wide open. Within a week, we would have the exact same conversation for the exact same reason with an escalated punishment. Well, there you go. He's one of those kids. I touched the stove once as a kid, and guess what, guys? Because I consider myself fairly intelligent, I didn't do it again. But some kids, that's what they do. Well, now on to the females. Oh, good. My daughter has an above-average intelligence, which in these days of Z-tards is not saying a whole lot. But she was advanced in math and English most of her time in school from grade 1 to 12, and graduated college with having been on the dean's list every semester, never having a single grade in college that was not an A. Well, that's impressive. It's just unfortunate that she's an asshole. A for asshole. She's not a dummy, but if our life was a reality show, she would get an award for acting like one. Yeah, they do. As we know, if you have watched enough content in the Mano Globe and the RP space, women do not take accountability. Yes, I have noticed that a few times, my friend. Mine were no exception. We've all seen it. Woman does something wrong, that's rude, inconsiderate, selfish, violates a boundary, etc., and the man gets upset. As we know, female psychology does not accept that she is the perpetrator of any wrongdoing, but the victim of his anger. And of course, they're always the victims. Their problem is not what she did, but his reaction to it. If he didn't react that way, the problem in her mind goes away. That's why women like this, and especially my wife, are such habitual liars. They do anything to avoid accountability and upset their man, and when all it takes is acting right. Duh. Novel concept, I know. Well, the problem is, number one, they're assholes, but also, they had no respect for you whatsoever. The damage had been done a long time ago. Women who are wired this way start to view their husband or father as the abuser or controlling, because in their immature brain, they should be able to do whatever they want without any consequences. This is also why every woman talks about her abusive, controlling ex, and the truly toxic ones, you can't act right. Say every man they dated was like that. Yep. You talk to any girl nowadays, and their ex is always the villain in the story. Always something. The abusive word is going to come out emotionally, mentally. Sometimes they say physically, and obviously that definitely ain't good. And while some guys may, in some capacity, behave in such a manner, the odds are they didn't. And this is just her reason. It's always the guy's fault, not their fault. There were hundreds of incidents that I did not take opportunity to check my ex, but one such incident I shall call the over-the-counter affair. Now listen to this. This is pretty darn funny. This is not going to surprise any of you. Well, we had a closet outside the master bathroom. One shelf was dedicated to over-the-counter medication. Cough, cold, flu, headaches, upset stomach, you get the point. I would often wake up in the middle of the night with something out of my sleep, and I had a stuffy nose or a sore throat that I needed to take care of. I'm one of those people that didn't like bright lights when I first wake up, and there's a night light in the bathroom close to the pill bottles from the shelf to see the label to verify what it is. Well, the shelf was a disaster. No organization, and my ex would use something and just toss it in on the shelf anywhere. 99 times out of 100, it would take forever to find what I'm looking for before it could be anywhere. And then you'd be fully awake and have a hard time going back to sleep. It doesn't surprise me your wife's a slob in terms of organization, because everything about her is a big giant slob, including her body. After hearing my swearing, slamming items back on the shelf, and rattling out pill bottles, she'd hop out of bed, huffing and puffing about it. Every time she did that, I always made the comment that if she organized it, I could find what I need on my own. I was feeling generous one day and thought I would do us both a favor. I pulled every bottle off the shelf, got some plastic bins, and labeled the bins for each medication type. I spent probably 6 hours sorting, combining, and checking dates to toss expired medication. Yeah, that would make sense to organize something like medicine and everything, for goodness sake. What if he took the wrong thing in the middle of the night? Within 2 weeks, the shelf in front of us were piled up with all the random crap she used and just dumped in front of them. I got home from work first, and I was waiting. I told her we needed to talk and went upstairs to the closet and asked her quite harshly, "What the fuck is this?" She knew, and her face dropped and started crying. Of course she started crying. I yelled at her that I spent almost an entire day organizing this, and she didn't have to get all this bitchy every time I couldn't find something. Yeah, you dedicate all that time and she screwed the whole thing up in no time. I remember I used the word disrespectful when describing it. I then hooked my arm and pulled every bin, every bottle, and item off that shelf in front of her onto the floor. I said since she didn't appreciate the work it took to organize the last time, maybe doing it herself would be a good experience. It took her a week, but eventually she got it done. Well, that's good, but I'm sure probably she told some people that you knocked everything out of there and you're the big abusive guy for doing that. Yet, literally, you're treating her like a child because she behaves like your fucking kids. Here are a couple more quick incidents that were fun for me to do. My ex liked to interrupt me when I was speaking, especially in public. That is unbelievable disrespect. You should never talk. Guys, you can hear all this stuff that the bullshit's going on with her, and we're not done yet. This is why it just amazes me that he stayed married to her as long as he did. I mean, my God. It's not worth it. I told her how rude and disrespectful it was, and she continued. Then we'd have shouting fights about it, and it didn't change. Then I thought of a fun trick. When she interrupted me, I would start making noises like clearing my throat, coughing, or something like that continued until she stopped. Then I would shout as loud as appropriate for the environment and loud enough to make people turn and stare, saying things like, "as I was saying," before I was so rudely interrupted, and then pick up where I left off. Well, that's funny, and I don't blame you, but again, this shows just how screwed up your relationship was. It was done a long time ago, as if it wasn't done when you first started. Most of the time, that resulted in her getting looks of shame, and when it was with her friends, they were all pissed off at me, which also greatly amused me. In usual fashion, it never went really away, but it became much less frequent. Well, you sure there were consequences, and I'm glad you stood up for yourself, but honestly, I just don't know how you did it that long. Another example was the plant hanging baskets. Every year, she bought a half dozen hanging baskets with flowers around the end of May. Every year by the end of June, they were all dead, and in November, when I was hanging Christmas decorations, I would take them down. Doesn't surprise me. That's what happens when you don't water plants. But of course, she was so disorganized and a slob, she never stopped to think to water the freaking plants. A few years in a row, I would tell her that this has continued, she wouldn't be allowed to get them anymore, and she assured me this year would be different. It never was, and finally one year I had enough. Around July, I had to go through the front door where the baskets were hanging, with the obviously dead plants in them. And that was that. She wasn't home from work yet, so I took all the baskets down, dumped them, smashed the pots in the driveway, blocking her entrance to the garage, so she'd have to clean it up. And I took the hooks down so she couldn't hang them anymore. I told her if she brought them again and let them die, I was going to dump them in her car before work. And she can explain why she was late to her boss. She never bought them again. Again, you can see how she would use this against you. It's funny, and you're treating her like a freaking dumbass teenager, but this is the only choice you had. But yeah, she's a big slob. Doesn't take care of anything. Certainly doesn't take care of her body. And by the way, he showed some pictures, and one picture he showed of his wife, like from behind, sitting on a chair. And holy crap, holy rolls, that's one big girl. She thought she could wear me down like her mother always did her spineless father, and I did very often prove that I was more of a man than her poor excuse that she called her dad. You should have paid attention to that. You should have paid attention early on to see that the relationship was bad with her mom and dad, and that's how she was going to treat you. It's usually how it works. Your daughter will treat her future husband the same way that your ex-wife treated you. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. And yet she did not learn, or she thought that she could keep it going long enough, that I would relent. All it takes is once to encourage her to keep it up. I was not aware of that at the time, and the cycle will continue. Well, you didn't know, man, until it was too late. I was not aware of that at the time, and the cycle continued. My son understood my frustration, but my daughter viewed this in the same way that my wife did, as an abusive and controlling attitude. Our relationship was a constant battle for control. I could be and often was an asshole, but I didn't like it. Why couldn't I just do something nice for these assholes and have them actually appreciate it for once? Exactly. Bad seeds. She's a mean fat bitch. Who the hell knows? But again, how you dealt with that so long? My God, man. But at least you're free now. You still got plenty of life on this planet, but my God. Well, there were two elephants in the room. Interesting choice of words. The second one was standing next to my wife is menopause. This hits every woman differently, from barely noticeable to hot flashes to going off the rails and acting batshit crazy. Guess where my wife fell on that spectrum? If you guess batshit crazy, you win the prize. Checking her, consequences, anything associated with negotiating a healthy relationship went completely out the window in those last 2 years. It was quite literally like arguing with a toddler. A toddler who could report you to the police and have you hauled away in cuffs if the argument got too heated. I had to pick my battles, control my temper, and let me tell you, it took all the strength in me to do that. I can imagine, man, but again, why the hell did you stay that long? But what's done is done. I'm going to keep saying it because I can't help but not say it. One thing you mentioned that I disagree with, but with context, was the comment about being disappointed that my kids didn't stop by when I was recovering from surgery, and even said that that was a female feminine reaction. I can understand how it may be done differently in other parts of the country, but I live in the Midwest. Where I grew up, with 3 other siblings, my mom comes from a family of 8 people, 8 kids, and my dad is a family of 5 kids. While my ex had a small family, the understanding was the same, and it's what my kids were exposed to. When your family, coworker, neighbor, or friend have a child, gets into an accident, lose a spouse, and yes, even have surgery, it is expected you at least check in on them, as best in person and preferably with some sort of food to help lower the stress and the workload in their life. He's referring to when he had knee surgery, and the kids checked on him after the surgery, but that was it. They never checked on him at home and stuff like that, and his mom and dad were there helping him, and he was pretty pissed about that. I don't blame him for being pissed, but I said to him, you didn't communicate to them. And just assuming they are mind readers, I said that's behaving like a woman does. And I do stand by that, but, he says his kids were exposed to an environment like that. But these are also, nowadays, the attention span of any Gen Zer is right out the door, the attention span of a gnat. My expectation was not unreasonable to have my kids check in on me, and I did actually address that after hearing my mom chirping in my ear for 1 week. This is nothing new for my family, strange, or something that should not need reminding by the age of adulthood. I wanted to give them a chance to do it on their own, and did end up communicating my needs to them in the end. But I probably should have done it before I got that angry. Oh well, sue me, ha ha ha. Well, what's done is done, but yeah, they disappointed you, it's a shame. Most etiquette and manners are feminine in origin. That doesn't make them unsuitable for men, at least in my opinion anyway. Well, we can agree disagree in the whole situation there. You asked if my son is getting anything as an inheritance, and the short answer is yes, but a very small amount. And there are 2 reasons. The first is his work ethic. At around 9 or 10 years old, he asked if he could use the shovel one day to shovel snow to make some money for Christmas. Of course, we said yes, and he came home with around $200, if memory serves. Hey, good for him. I like that. Later, when he was too young to work at a fast food place or some store, he came home one day and told us he got a job on a farm as a hand and an operation walking distance from home. Again, good for him. I like his work ethic. Your son is better than your daughter, but he's done a lot of things I don't like. But we were all wondering about the whole inheritance thing, if he's getting a piece. He had jobs and a bigger savings account than his parents did at one point. At high school, he was in scouts, cross-country, track, and baseball at different times. Not one penny came out of the family funds to pay for his activities. He kicked butt in fundraisers and got top sales awards almost every time. Anything not covered by fundraising, he paid for himself. That's good. You went right there. Whatever you did, or maybe that's just his natural way of doing things, I like that. That means he has hope in spite of his bonehead ways as a teenager and some of the dumb stuff he's done. There's hope for him. My daughter, on the other hand, reluctantly got a job, but blocked out so many days for social reasons, she just made enough money to pay for her gas and her car and her phone bill. The kids had a requirement that they had to pay for their own phone and gas, or they would lose the car or phone, whichever they didn't pay for. I remember her working one shift a month quite often and barely participated in fundraisers for her activities. Well, that's because the princess didn't think she had to work for anything. I'm glad you stuck with that. Almost all of her activities were paid for by the family funds. You mean your funds. Other than dance studio fees that my wife stole, I was not given the option to weigh in on this decision. On a positive note, my ex did keep track of the money she paid for these things, and I used that debt as a marital asset to offset paying the bills of maintaining the home while I was being made ready for the sale during the divorce process. Well, that's good. We'll take any silver lining with all the crap you went through. I told my son that I'm leaving him something to offset my ex's favoritism and out of fairness. He has told me several times and several occasions that he doesn't need or want an inheritance because he's going to make his own money. Well, good for him for saying that. And some people may say he's just saying that to make you happy, but I actually, based on when you described him as a kid, wanting to make his own money, that may be a possibility. I told my parents years ago, when my dad was alive, that, don't worry about it, I'll make it on my own. I meant that, After he got off active duty, he joined the Guard. He's pursuing a firefighter career, and the Guard is furthering that for him. I talked to him a few days ago, regarding investments, his status in applying for firefighter jobs, getting his EMT certification, and he mentioned at 23 he was about half a year's salary saved for buying a home already. Good for him. There is hope. I want at least with your son, him to grow up in some other ways and that you can actually have a relationship later on. There's hope for him. You deserve this, man. After all the shit you've been through, at least you can have your son, and it sounds like he's on the path. We can all hope. Another question that made me seriously bust out laughing: who would sleep with the ex? In other words, he thought she was sleeping with other people. Who'd want to sleep with her fat ass? That was a question I immediately asked, and a lot of you guys asked that too. He says, well, a few reminders here. We live in the Midwest. Girls are big here. Most of them. There's also a certain demographic that is known to dig big girls. I wonder who you're talking about. I guess she took a trip to Jamaica sometime after the divorce was final. LOL, I hope she's got the herpes. I got a friend who's Jamaican, and his wife is, she's a big girl. I don't need to say any more than that. In your wrap-up monologue, you mentioned my daughter circling around someday and trying to get back into my life. I already know her motivation and got the feeling when she recommended or reconnected last time around. What is on the list every bride wants on her wedding day? Her daddy to walk her down the aisle and pay for her dream wedding. Now you're getting somewhere. Exactly. Don't be fooled. It's going to happen. She told me in so many words that this was on her mind and how her brother giving her away was just gross. Here's another scenario I can absolutely see happening. I'm supposed to kick in half the cost of this big extravaganza, which is not happening for the record, and I would not be surprised at all she disrespected me on the wedding day in some major way. Very likely would happen. I've covered stories in the other channels where something just like that happened. Don't fall for it. I've heard stories of brides soaking their old man for a fortune, then having their stepdad walk them down the aisle or have to share the honor. I've also heard of two fathers of the bride in my personal life who were seated in the back of the hall at dinner instead of a place of honor in the front where the mother of the bride was seated. I think the odds of one of these happening to me, are better than 50%, and I think I'm going to enjoy not worrying about that shoe is about to fall, as we're not having to finance a wedding for someone who could give a crap about me. Good. And here's the thing, I'm willing to bet you, based on what I think, is if you had a good daughter, truly loving, the exact opposite of what you had, you'd be more than happy, within reason, to finance a big wedding and be there for her, but with how she's treated you, no freaking way, so don't fall for it. She's going to try. So he wraps up this Q&A by saying also that if I check back and see any more comments that warrant an update or two, I'll respond as my schedule allows. And now one more thing about the Philippines, because this guy's off to the Philippines and all, or he's been there already, but he's still really thinking about moving there. He says, now I'm going to step away from the screens for a while to get ready to spend another month in the Philippines. The second one this year. I'll leave in 23 days, and this trip, I have somebody meeting me at the airport. Aha! Found somebody already, huh? We've been chatting online and by video for over a year now. The last trip she couldn't be there because she's an overseas worker, OFW, and has been for almost 14 years. Be careful, my man. Be careful. I don't want you to make the same mistake twice. On paper, she seems like a unicorn. Smack! There's no such thing. This isn't the fucking Harry Potter world. I know you know this, but still. But don't worry, boys. She will be thoroughly vetted, tested, and exhibit wife material traits or hit the bricks in short order. The country is absolutely filled with extremely beautiful, thin, petite, kind, gentle, and friendly women. Abundance is in a man's favor there, and we're going to be very picky. Filipinos by nature are very mild-mannered people. Pleasant and cooperative are the descriptive terms I hear over and over, along with nurturing and caring. Well, that's what I hear too, but better make sure you still have money. You don't have money, I think all the nurturing and caring is going to go right out the freaking door. I'm being honest, just a realist here. Unlike the boss babes here, most women there take actual joy in taking care of the house, as opposed to how American women can't stop bitching and complaining about doing any domestic chores. In the rare event they actually do them in the first place. Many expats who marry a local laugh about being barred from the kitchen and not knowing where any of the cooking or cleaning supplies are. It is a poor country, and there are quite a lot of romance scammers, though. I'm glad you're aware of that because, yes, there's a lot of scammers out there big time. Be careful. After all I've been through and the subsequent work and research I've been doing, I'm pretty confident I can handle this. Plus, I made enough friends on the first trip to get advice from should I have any issues or questions. Yes, get to know locals. Local guys just like you, Westerners out there who've been through the situation. It'll help you. I'm very happy being single, and it's going to have to be a very special woman who changes that. I'll take your advice not to marry to heart, but I'm not going to rule that out. Smack! There's no need to get married, for God's sake. You made a gal you have a good time with, fine, knock yourself out, but don't be fooled. You're in your late 50s, for God's sakes. Why screw it up? But it's your life. My last trip, which lasted 28 days, was amazing. I visited 4 waterfalls, swam with the sardines in Mole Bowl, or whatever the hell it's pronounced, did my first zip lining, which was over 1 kilometer long, and lots more. Nature and outdoors are my thing, and this country has 7,000 plus islands, has so much to offer me. I'm so excited for this chapter of my life. My plan is to move there next fall, early winter permanently, with annual month-long visits back to the States to spend time with the family. Or more like the family you want to spend time with. I'm guessing not necessarily your kids, but more like brothers and sisters and all that. Well, man, I appreciate the update here. That was a great story that you had, nearly an hour and a half long videos this weekend. That's why I did this right away, because this is fresh in people's heads. But you deserve some good things in your life. So enjoy the Philippines. Have a great time, but don't rush into anything. There's no need to get married. Just don't do that. Really. How beautiful the girl is, how cool she is and all that. Come on here. But have a blast. You have earned it. Absolutely. And I really do hope your son, because he's still obviously young, maybe early, mid-20s now, continues to get his life together. Maybe by his late 20s, 30 years old, he's a full-blown adult. There's no bullshit anymore. All that annoying kid things are gone. And you deserve that, for goodness sake. And your daughter, it's unfortunate, but she brought this on herself. She's a freaking adult, end of story. And your fat bitch ex-wife, I still stand by the fact that she will be reaching out one day when the money's gone. It will happen. All right, guys, that's it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. Wish this guy a lot of luck. And be sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.